Okay, welcome to the stream, friends. What's up? Let me make sure the audio is good. Yes, 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 yes. Test. Welcome. Late night. We've got occultism tonight. The video. Just myself. We've got occultism. Okay, welcome to the stream, friends. What's up? Turn that bullshit off. Okay. We got Aleister Crowley, Jack Parsons, featuring Robert Anton Wilson. Be the bulk of our stream, be studying and processing that. This is mostly coming out of, let me show y'all. I better not actually. I can show, let's see what I can show before I share my screen. I don't want to out anyone. What do the kids call it? Doxing? Um, okay, I can do it. Okay, I share this. Facebook. I came out publicly that I practice magic and that I feel that it's ethical. Let me just read it to y'all. It's getting late on a Sunday and I moved to reveal something to you publicly period. Based on personal experience, I have evidence that the practice of magic works. When I'm talking about magic, I don't mean stage tricks. I mean spells, rituals, and summoning non-human intelligence. This is a vulnerable share because it makes me anathema to many religious communities and incredulous to many scientific communities. Also, I have some political ambitions, bracket, I know, red flag emoji, and bracket, and I don't know if we're ready for a practicing ceremonial magician in office. Oh, well, I would use this definition of magic, magic is the science and art of causing change and to occur in conformity with will, end quote. And then editorial. And this is quoting Crowley, who we'll explore tonight a little bit. And editorial, back to the quote. Given that definition, and due to my ethical commitments as a therapist, I don't see how I could withhold my knowledge of this set of technologies from the public. I am committed to the values of autonomy, bracket, increasing agency, and beneficence, bracket, being as helpful as possible. Because of this, I need to be real that traditionally occulted traditions and techniques might increase your agency and help yins in some way. I feel that it is my duty to explore how some of these traditional technologies work for these three reasons. One, to work towards understanding the mechanism of action behind magical change. Two, to better understand the risks. Three, ultimately increase the affordances people have when dealing with challenging experiences like trauma and treatment-resistant mental health condition issues. The end. P.S. I've been reaching out to some cool magic people to do interviews. If you're interested, find them on the internet. Finding them on the internet means coming to this channel, basically. Okay, excellent. So that brings us to the stream. So right now you're in the intro. Soon, so that's like the context, right? That's what's kind of interesting me right now. We'll listen to Robert Anton Wilson. I've got a lecture queued up. Then we will process it by looking at this chart. It's not my best chart, y'all. I need to work on it, but it's looking at Crowley, Karl Popper, and David Bentley Hart, which I think are they are representative of three traditions: occultism / hermeticism, religion, and science. And I think Crowley's trying to fuse those, which I think is fascinating. Oh, but with my posts, as I said, I predicted this, I prophesized it. Now, I'm not calling myself a prophet, but if I were to be a prophet, it would be a very minor Gnostic prophet. And I think I did hit this one, which is I got both multiple texts from former people I've worked with in the recovery space. When I say texts, I mean messages on Facebook. People saying I'm demonic, that I'm trafficking with demons, which fair enough. That is true, actually, in a certain sense. I call them non-human intelligence, but I mean, fair enough. But they're using it in a kind of derogatory way. And then also a representative of this organization. Should I? No, I won't do it. I won't be petty. A representative of an organization that I've had some dealings with, mostly positive, came hard at me, called me crazy, said blocked me. I asked them to come on the live stream, and they would not. So c'est la vie. But anyways, so we'll look at all that. And then I've also got this idea that I want to so we'll process notes from it. I've already taken some notes, but we'll see what Robert Anton Wilson thinks. In case you don't know, writer of The Cosmic Trigger. Founder of Discordianism, I think. But this is one we could look at, and this is one we could look at. Illuminatus trilogy. He's interesting fella. But yeah, so let's get into that. Let me share with sound. Okay, let's add. Call it a ritual, eh? Okay, mute myself now.
Scientist, whatever he was the greatest. He was one of the greatest men of the 20th century who was not known. Most people have heard of Buckminster Fuller and Albert Einstein and Aleister Crowley to some extent, James Joyce. Jack Parsons is virtually unknown, and yet he was more than anybody else responsible for the American space program and the fact that a man as Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. He's responsible for the whole space program, and he was one of the greatest libertarian philosophers who ever lived. His book, Freedom is a Two-Edged Sword, seems to me one of the greatest statements of libertarian philosophy ever written. And if I had $1 million, I would print enough copies of that to put one in every home in the United States so that everybody would have a chance to read it. I'm a very ardent libertarian myself, but I disagree with most libertarians about a lot of issues. Jack Parsons is the one libertarian I agree with about almost everything in the 20th century. There are some 19th century libertarians I agree with about almost everything, such as Lysander Spooner, Ezra Heywood, Benjamin Tucker, but they were almost all forgotten, like Jack Parsons. Libertarianism does not have much popularity, although this country was founded on libertarian principles. Jack Parsons was not only a great libertarian philosopher and a great scientist, but he was a very gifted and talented and philosophical and intelligent occultist, which is hard for a lot of people to understand. Most people think you're either a scientist or an occultist. You can't be both. Jack Parsons is the classic example of that you can be both. There are many other cases in history like Isaac Newton, Giordano Bruno, Johannes Kepler, but Parsons was the only one in recent times who was undoubtedly a major scientist, or at least a major engineer, which meant that he had to have a lot of basic scientific knowledge to be such a great engineer, and a major practicing occultist. And so the fact that he was a scientist, an occultist, and a libertarian makes him a tremendously fascinating and important figure. And the reason he's not generally known is because most people can't understand how you can put science, libertarianism, and occultism together in one head. And that's why Jack Parsons is so important. He did it, and he was probably murdered by the United States government just because of that. Either that or he died in an accident, depending on whose story you believe. Well, the separation between science and occultism is a fairly modern thing. In the Renaissance, science and occultism were very closely related. As I mentioned, Kepler and Newton and practically everybody else who was important in the creation of the scientific revolution was also a practicing occultist. The outstanding example is Giordano Bruno, who was burned by the Catholic Church, burned at the stake on February 16th, 1600 in Rome. Bruno was charged with 18 counts of heresy, and including practicing magic and teaching the Copernican theory of astronomy and founding secret societies to oppose the Vatican. Frances Yates, a leading historian, wrote about her major topic was the birth of the modern scientific worldview in the Renaissance. She thinks Bruno may have founded either Freemasonry or Rosicrucianism, or maybe both of them. And in that tradition, Adam Weishaupt, the founder of the Illuminati, is another person in that tradition, and Aleister Crowley is another. He was Parsons' major teacher. The general view is that science is based on experiment and occultism is based on woozy thinking and blind faith. But the kind of occultism that the Western world has produced from the Renaissance to the present has been based on the same principles as science. It's based on very simple things. You do this and you observe the result. It's just like science. It's just the same thing as scientific experiment. You sit in a certain posture and try to empty your mind and see what happens. You change your posture and use a mantra. Instead of trying to empty your mind, you just keep repeating over and over, Om Namu Shivaya, Om Namu Shivaya, Om, or whatever the hell you want, Hare Krishna, 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 or whatever you want. My favorite is Shamati Shawati, Shamati Shawati, Shamati Shamati, Shamati Shawati. It's like a windshield wiper, but it really empties the mind pretty quickly. Shamati Shawati, Shamati Shawati, Shamati Shamati, Shamati Shawati. Magic in the Western occult sense is a whole bunch of tricks and devices, clever means, as they say in Hinduism, clever means to mutate your consciousness by blocking the usual paths your consciousness goes in. Ordinary consciousness is a conditioned response to early childhood experiences and early conditioning and early learning and so on, which is why the children of most Catholics remain Catholics, the children of most communists remain communists, the children of most Muslim fundamentalists remain Muslim fundamentalists, etc., etc., etc. If you want to break out of the robotic conditioning imposed on you in childhood, you need some kind of dramatic technique. And Western occultism is one of the more dramatic techniques of busting out of conditioned consciousness to become aware of the many levels of reality that you can perceive if you're not trapped in one particular reality tunnel. Parsons understood Crowley very well. Another American scientist who suffered as much misrepresentation or just plain being ignored by the mass media, Timothy Leary, also understood the importance of Crowley. Leary's work is very much in the same tradition as Crowley and Parsons. You do certain things and you observe the result, and you see what conclusions you can obtain from that. Crowley, Parsons, and Leary both used consciousness-altering drugs to a great extent. That is considered the major crime in modern America for reasons that go back to the witchcraft persecutions. Joan of Arc was burned at the stake for using drugs to contact superior intelligences, which she called angels. The Catholic Church called them demons. Whatever the hell they were, they told her to unite France and drive the English out. She used marijuana. It's very interesting that people are in jail all over this country for the same crime that Joan of Arc was burned at the stake for, isn't it? Jack Parsons was probably killed by the American government for using the same techniques of altering consciousness. I think Crowley's techniques, Crowley's magazine, The Equinox, had the masthead, the magazine of scientific Illuminism. And the importance of the scientific method in the Crowley system is not generally understood. Most people just know that Crowley detested organized religion. They know he hated Christianity. They don't know he hated every other organized religion too, and was very careful not to found one of his own. There are no Crowleyans, or anybody who thinks they're a Crowleyan doesn't understand Crowley. There is no Crowleyan religion. As far as there's a Crowleyan movement, it's called, they call themselves Thelemites rather than Crowleyans, because they don't want to build Crowley up into an idol, which is the last thing he wanted. What he wanted was for people to use his methods to discover the truth of their own inner nature, which is different for every person. That's the meaning of Crowley's mantra: every man and every woman is a star. You got to find the star within yourself. And Parsons found the star within himself, and that allowed him to be tremendously creative when nobody else, except Goddard, I mean. I was getting Goddard confused with the French movie director. Since Goddard was an American, it would be pronounced Goddard, wouldn't it? Goddard was the only one besides Jack Parsons who realized the potentials of space travel and the fact that we could do it in this century. Parsons was a lot more creative than Goddard, and his work. Well, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena was not only founded by Parsons, but some people claim the initials were deliberately picked to have his initials in them, Jack Parsons, JPL. And the Aerojet Corporation, which he created, makes the solid fuels used in all of our moon launchings, our shuttles. The whole space program really depends on Jack Parsons. That's why he has a crater on the moon named after him. He couldn't have made those breakthroughs without getting out of... Hell, when I was young, I remember adults telling me when I was a teenager, "What are you reading that science fiction crap for? That stuff is all impossible." But I was going to a technical high school, and I knew that it was all possible. I didn't know how soon, but I knew it would be possible someday, so I was fascinated by it. Jack Parsons had the visions to say, hey, it's possible right now. We just got to put our money and our energy into it, and we can do it. And by the time he died, there were rockets all over the damn place. And he died in 52, and in 69, the first man walked on the moon. If Parsons had lived longer, he would have made even more contributions to space science. I don't know what turned Parsons on to Crowley originally. I have a few guesses. It could have been Liber Oz, which Crowley wrote because somebody complained that his books were too hard to understand. So he wrote a one-page summary of all of his ideas. in which almost every word is one syllable. There are a couple of two-syllable words in it, but most of it is one word, one-syllable words. It begins, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law," which is all one syllables. And it goes on, "Man has the right to live as he will, to love as he will, to create art as he will, to create science as he will, to dress as he will," and it goes on like that. Mostly, as I said, one-syllable words. That might have been what turned Parsons on. Or maybe it was Book 4, which is the most rational scientific account of mysticism ever written. Crowley begins by saying we live in a world in which there's a lot of suffering. The first thing we notice is the amount of suffering that we endure and the amount of suffering going on around us. So the major question of philosophy is, how can we escape suffering? And then he describes yoga step by step as a series of techniques for abolishing suffering by detaching yourself from mechanical conditioned reactions within the nervous system. And then he goes on to explain magic as a series of techniques to make yoga work faster. That could have appealed very much to somebody with a background like Parsons. And then again, maybe it was just one of Crowley's, maybe it was one of Crowley's novels, like Diary of a Dope Fiend, which might have appealed to somebody with a chemical background. I got interested in psychedelics because of a conservative philosopher named Russell Kirk, who in one of his books mentioned Aldous Huxley's experiments with mescaline and said this proved the existence of heaven and hell. I wasn't sure it proved the existence of heaven and hell, but what I observed was that it showed that consciousness depends on the chemistry of the brain. And that's what got me interested in psychedelic research, because the idea that consciousness depends on the chemistry of the brain is a natural thought to me. I had a kind of I had basically a scientific education to start with. And so that could have appealed very much to Parsons with his background. But however I got interested in Crowley, Crowley was like a key that opened a lot of locks for Jack Parsons. The idea that the Crowley system is black magic derives from a lot of fundamental misunderstandings. The only possible intelligent definition of black magic is using psychic power to harm people, putting curses on people, trying to make them sick, trying to kill them, sticking pins in voodoo dolls, that kind of thing. That has nothing to do with Crowley's system. The Crowley system is considered black magic by fundamentalists and people of that ilk because it's entirely devoid of Christian emphasis. It's ecumenical. It includes Taoism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and it includes Christianity too, although Crowley tried to hide that as he got older because he got more and more hostile to Christianity. But if you do some of Crowley's rituals, you'll get a deeper understanding of what the mystical level of Christianity. I got my deepest insight into the symbolism of the crucifixion doing a Crowley ritual. It includes all the religions of the world, but it's not limited to any one of them. And to fundamentalists, that is the great satanic blasphemy, not putting Christianity above all other religions. The New Age, the reason they're so hostile to the New Age is it doesn't say Christianity is the one true path. The New Age says learn from all the religions. That's what Crowley was saying too, except he didn't like religions. He was saying learn from all the practices. Don't accept any of the dogmas, but try the practices and see where they get you. Try meditating, try praying, try yoga, try drugs, try everything that shamans and wizards and yogis have been doing from the dawn of history, and see where it gets you, and use scientific skepticism about the results. Crowley never believed any of the supernatural, the supernatural entities he contacted. He realized that they were all projections of parts of himself, and so he learned from them what you can, but don't believe everything they tell you. Some of them are liars. That's a very central part of Crowley's teachings, and Parsons understood that too. Parsons got involved in this idea of the moon child from one of Crowley's novels, and the idea is to create an infant who will be born all through the 9 months of pregnancy. There will be all these magical and magical in quotes and other influences to separate the child from normal earthly influences and make them more compatible with life in outer space, because Parsons saw the future of humanity as being in outer space, and he wanted to create a child who would be equipped to live in outer space. Well, since then we found out that going into outer space creates a mutation in consciousness anyway. 85% of the American astronauts and the Soviet cosmonauts have all had mystical experiences. People who go into zero gravity experience the same kind of change in consciousness that you get on marijuana or hashish. This is only one of the many higher levels of consciousness. It's nothing like LSD or the psychedelics, but it's a definite mutation in consciousness. And Parsons was trying to create a child who would be born with that kind of consciousness and would never be dragged down by the... I can't help quoting Timothy Leary again. Gravity is the enemy, levity is the salvation. Levitate, go higher, don't get pulled down, don't get dragged down, don't be too grave, don't be too serious. And Parsons understood that. It's time for us to get used to outer space. And it's happening whether Parsons was responsible or not. Some people think his Mojave Venus working was not completed properly, and that's why we're having all these weird UFO phenomena. Whether that's true or not, we are getting ready for outer space just by the simple fact that so many millions of people believe they've had outer space contacts already. They're turning into moon children in the Parsons sense. And of course, those who have very rigid belief systems find it absolutely terrifying, and all they can remember is that they were raped by little green monsters from outer space. Well, that's not quite what happened, in my opinion, but it's the only sense they can make out of this kind of experience of encountering extraterrestrial intelligence. As Jodie Foster, the scriptwriter, or whoever says in Contact, if we're the only intelligent beings in a universe this size, that's an awful waste of space. Parsons' major occult educational background came through the Ordo Templi Orientis, which was founded or revived or whatever. In these subjects, there are always alternative versions of what happened. But sometime in the 1890s, a couple of German Freemasons named Karl Kellner and Theodor Reuss decided to create a Masonic academy, which would be a kind of central office in which all the different Masonic traditions could be rationalized, synthesized, and the differences between various orders of Freemasonry could be abolished. Well, what they created didn't satisfy any of the different schools of Freemasonry, and did not become a Masonic academy, so they changed its name to the Ordo Templi Orientis. And it was their idea of what was the most sound and important and revolutionary aspects of Freemasonry. And they got a lot of disciples all over Europe and some in England. One of them was Wynne Westcott, who was a member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, a Rosicrucian society in England, in which Crowley got his early education in occultism. And in 1912, approximately, Theodor Reuss came to Crowley and told him, "You've written a book in which you reveal the secret of the 9th degree of the Ordo Templi Orientis. Why have you done that?" And Crowley said, "I don't know any. I didn't reveal any secret of the 9th degree because I don't know what that is." And Reuss said, "Well, you've published it very clearly." And he showed him the chapter in a book of Crowley's with the humorous title, "The Book of Lies, Falsely So Called." which is a wonderful title because of the book. The title tells you it's a book of lies. The subtitle tells you it's not a book of lies. And you got to figure out whether to believe the title or the subtitle. And when Crowley looked at the chapter Roy showed him, he realized suddenly he had been a 33rd degree Freemason at that point already. He suddenly realized that the Ordo Templi Orientis really did have what was the most central and important part of Freemasonry. So he accepted the 9th degree, and when Royce died, he appointed Crowley to the 10th degree, which is the outer head of the Ordo Templi Orientis.
All right. I think that's good. So processing. Let me get my headphones, y'all. Also, let's check on the chat. How you doing, chat? Let me know where you're calling in from or who's in the house. I'd like to know all the different locations. I love the demographics of this channel. They're very fun. Okay, but let's process some of these notes, y'all. Just fixing these. So what jumped out to me, I'm curious what jumped out to y'all. So things that probably aren't going to work out for, or things I need to explore. Libertarian versus socialism. See Liber, Oz, and freedom as a two-edged sword. Because I have to admit that I kind of blanch when I hear libertarian, and I kind of identify as more of a socialist. But the thing is like maybe, I mean, what Robert Anton Wilson would say is that like I've been conditioned. And I don't think that's quite true because I think I've been more conditioned as a liberal. And there is a distinction between a socialist and a liberal. And so I do think my readings have broken me out of some of my initial conditioning. But just, in my milieu, it's much more safe and attractive to be a socialist. But I am convinced of that as of right now, but that could change. And we'll definitely look at this as a provocation. But what Peace Now is about equals transitioning from a society based on violence to a society based on care/love. And what libertarian and liberalism, and this is my violence could be like a rhetorically charged way of saying competition. And of course, markets are about competition, right? So libertarianism is about the competition of ideas fundamentally, but I don't think that's what freedom as a two-edged sword is really about. But there's this idea of negative liberty and positive, two concepts that we should probably look into. Yeah, so this idea of like, I can't tell you what not to say versus positive liberty, like I want to give you something, I think. Self-mastery. I need to look into this more, but I don't really feel like it right now because it's getting late. It's about 10:40 on the East Coast. Maybe I have some West Coasters watching live. US. And what time is it in Rio? I should know this. So y'all are 2 hours ahead of us. My friends in Rio. I got a lot of Brazilian fans, which I love. But I don't need to have streams that are accessible for y'all and learn Portuguese. I'm assuming some of y'all speak English since you watch. But if you need some translations, let me know. But anyways, I want to talk about, okay, so that was a thing that we need to look at. We also need to look at, by the way, I'm not doing this right. Jesus. You got to see me how I like to format things, y'all. I love Google Docs, but I do not want this to be so big. Okay, also very interesting philosophers. Spooner. Who did he mention? Spooner. Spooner. I'll have to re-listen. You mentioned another person too that I hope it emerges. There's a couple bleeding heart libertarians. What do they call themselves? Center for a Stateless Society. There are interesting people out there. Like I would project like a Ron Paul, but I think there are pretty interesting ideas out there around these folks that we could look into. Another thing was, I loved holding a absurd, unbelievable intention like space travel. That is actually very helpful when it comes to like I'm not interested in going to space, but I am contrast space travel with ending overdose, feeding everyone, overcoming coordination problems. Because the problem with socialism can't solve coordination problems. See Hayek, etc. There's huge critiques that we need to deal with. From an economic perspective, from a social morality perspective, like I think we're Robert Anton Wilson and I are in full agreement. Don't tell other people what to do. But some of this economic questions, I think, and I guess like there's a question with my care thing. It's like, am I projecting something on him? Like, oh, don't take my money and make me pay for your charity project. There's something like that that we'll have to deal with, I think more about. But I really loved this holding absurd, unbelievable intention. There was another thing I liked about magic speeds up the process of yoga. Yoga intention equals abolish suffering. I really like that. By detaching from conditioned responses of the nervous system. That was pretty dope. Yeah, I think Robert Anton Wilson crushed that one. Okay. So I think this is important stuff for us to look at. Stream news, interesting people coming on. Kistis. She's coming on Friday. So excited. We'll have to do a Thursday stream and deep dive. It's Monday right now. And then I don't want to, well, let me pull up my calendar. I don't want to show YouTube. So that's Friday. Yes. And then next week, we've got Jamie March. And then we've got Nicker on the week. Oh my gosh, next week is the week of the 17th is gonna be lit. We've got how do you spell this guy's name? I do not know how to spell this or pronounce this gentleman. But I know he's a genius. So we got him, Andrzej Grubash, one of the only anarchist anthropologists. Let me show you. Very interesting. We've got Jamie March coming on, Process Not Perfection. Very interesting. Anyways, some interesting stream news. And then Sarah, she's coming on Masters. Yeah, Sarah. Pretty awesome. Witchlessons.com. Writing a book, 13 Lessons in Practical Magic. Sick. Yeah, so we're doing some more magic stuff, y'all. Okay. Okay, let's do the last thing. I want to run this past y'all. It's actually super unorganized right now, so let's see how. Okay. So basically, I want to read some of the classics. So the first thing I did was I looked at. So there's this book. Let me give you some how to read a book. More. Classic Guide to Intelligent Reading. That's a good book, excuse me. But he has these 4 aspects of reading. So I looked at canonical texts like Homer, Hamlet, Pride and Prejudice, Moby Dick, Kill a Mockingbird, 100 Years of Solitude, Infinite Jest, Waves, Blood Meridian, Gravity's Rainbow, Finnegan's Wake, The Recognitions. Then I was like, I don't want it to be so ordered because I like to lose a lot. So Uh, Losing Guitari. Sorry, I'm from Pittsburgh. I really want to get the French down. I do. I promise I do. So please forgive me. Deleuze. That's probably how I sound to y'all. Deleuze and Guitari. Is that it? Help me out in the comments. But they look at this thing, you know, we could categorize lines of flight by its opposite, rigid hierarchical structures. And we want network-like systems. So they use this rhizome. And I picture it as like, y'all following my desire. Like instead of going through a very, how do I explain this? Okay, let's look at a rhizome. You see how it's like squiggly? Like, it's like if we picture these as like desire, each line is like a following a impulse. Okay. Think of it like that. Following the different impulses. So then I was like, okay, what would like a reading group based on this be like? And I've got some ideas, but then I was like, oh, what if we did this? Like, oh, and then I also wanted to connect it with archetypal literary criticism. So this is going to be pretty dope, I think. But then I was like, oh, what if we did this? Like each month, it could be one of three, and we do like some kind of random thing and read it. Um, I think that would be fun. But I did want to tell you something there. When we're reading this, you're invited to come. We'll do a reading list. Oh, wait. Hold on. Hold on. Give me a second. I'm not quite ready. Sorry, I was just getting off work, my work stuff. I had more than that. Let me look at my Apple Notes. Okay, yeah. Wait, no. This is where I'm. Okay, yes. But I didn't flesh this out as much. Just go down to the bottom. I love it. This is so chaotic. It's not that chaotic, but you know, I have this chaos inside me, and the ordering and structure of things helps me find peace. I've got an obsessional character, according to my analyst. Am I sharing my screen? I'm not. Sorry. Okay. So like this was the original thing, but it would be like analyze the structure of epic poetry, discuss the portrayal of heroes and gods, and explore the historical context of Greek literature. Study Shakespeare's language, analyze Austen's critique of societal norms, and then like, yeah. So I think it could be fun if you're interested in it. Let me know, and I think I'm going to call it Death Drive. We can do some film stuff. death drive a weird ritual? All right, we'll see how that goes, y'all. What else? How long have we been on, by the way? How are we doing time-wise? The minutes, not bad. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. What else is going on? Let me see who else I want to tell you about. It's coming on. I told you about. Oh, we've got Mark Charles, former presidential campaigner. We've got Mobius Mind, Chris. Who else we got? I've been doing better with getting guests. Looking at my calendar is kind of random because I think about the things I'm doing in life. We need to get some guests for the later part of December. I know like people will take off and stuff though. But in January, oh, we've got Rose. Hell yeah. January 12th. We've got Molly, January 19th. Okay, I need to make sure that, oh, yes, we've got Dr. Dollahide, the 23rd. Yeah, I hope. Then I'm going to Mexico. Okay. I'm just kind of letting it, talking to y'all about my calendar, but you might be interested because of the podcast. But anyways, we should end. Sleep, go to bed. It's 11 Eastern. Let me know what y'all think if you want more magic stuff. I'm gonna keep doing it, but I'd love to connect with more magic people. Look into some chaos magic maybe. If you have anyone you want me to interview, let me know. Any questions, thoughts? Love to do the dialogue thing. So